So it's very important to try and stay in contact with people with the same objective. It's generally only a couple. If there are a lot of them, it's the wrong field to be in. Okay. So at the time, there was Pauling, and Pauling didn't speak to anyone because he acted as if he was God. So he only spoke to his wife. It's true. Now, he had a co-worker named Pauling and Corey, but Corey was dull. Oh, he was, and he would never disagree with anything that Pauling said. So Pauling didn't speak to anyone. Wilkins and Franklin didn't speak to each other because they were both awkward. Crick and I did speak to each other. But it was the speaking of really my going to London. Okay. Getting the facts. And then the sort of last rule is that if you're, really going out seeking gold, you're probably not going to find it. So when you come home, you should have someone who will give you a job even though you failed. So you should never be without a patron. If you're without a patron, and you're young, you're in really shit. It's bad because the chances are when you go out and try something very difficult, you'll probably fail. So Delbrook was going to give me, let me be a postdoc in Caltech. He had arranged it after I failed in Cambridge. He assumed I would fail. He wished me luck, but he assumed I would fail. So you never, again, this is social, and you should really, have someone who believes you should have a second chance. Okay. So I think that's the, those are, the general things. You have to be ahead of your time, but you should have a way upwards. You should have someone who's trying to do the climb with you. And you should really be conscious of other people who are trying to climb also up to the top. And I should say that, it's very awkward if you're friends with your competitors. What happens when one? And so when I wrote the book, it's called The Double Helix, the original title was Honest Jim. Okay, there was a famous book by Conrad Lord Jim, and then there was the comic but very, very good novel by Kingsley Amis, Lucky Jim. And I thought Honest Jim would deal with the question of whether, which was raised by the novel, was I honest? So Francis Crick, he really didn't like the book. He was the hero of it, but and he said, you shouldn't call yourself Honest Jim. But then I implied that they call used car dealers Honest Jim. So by using the title Honest Jim, it was raising the question, was I honest to use the X-ray photograph from King's to think about? Well, I never felt any guilt whatsoever. But that photo was almost a year old. They had not used it. So it was just sitting there. And but then you could say, well, still, you got all the credit. But when it was very awkward, we had to call up London, and we didn't have the courage to do it. So Kendrew called up Wilkins and said, Francis and Jim have something interesting. So he came up, and then he immediately looked at it and said, it's right. And then we said, we want your name on the paper. So we thought, well, it wouldn't be fair. But he said no. Probably because, there was Rosalind Franklin also. But then in his autobiography, he said it was the biggest mistake in his life. Because it had been the Watson-Crick-Wilkins structure. But I think it was the only way to behave, was to, now I'd forgotten that and didn't put it in the double helix. But Wilkins remembered it, right? Because he always regretted, what is the role. But then when the Nobel Prizes were awarded, the people, Sir Lawrence Bragg, who was probably nominated us, he included Wilkins in the nomination. Because, it was the decent thing to do.